I'm gonna piss in your mouth.
There's a couple ideas I want to kind of get through, but as I get through them, it's going to create like an overall point to all of this bullshit. But comparing suffering in a world full of pain is like going band for band with your local rabbi. It's just not going to work out for you. You're always going to lose, because there will always be someone who's gone through more than you, who has faced more challenges, more obstacles than you. And I mean, there's nothing wrong sharing your problems or things you've gone through with others. Maybe seeking some kind of support. But when the conversation becomes more of a competition rather than an outlet to share your problems or get advice or whatever the hell, and this becomes more of like a pissing contest, then that's where I think you have failed. Because, like I said, there's so many other people on this earth have gone through so many other things than you and have experienced way worse than you. And I'm not saying like, that kind of sentiment of like eat your food, there's kids in Africa starving, but rather I think, which I'll get to the end of the video at this point, is that you need to kind of grow above that and allow yourself to evolve from that pain and suffering, you know. And that kind of adds to that idea. There's also this like idea like the more pain and the more suffering that you've gone through, you kind of deserve more. There's always that joke of like to win Americans Got Talent, you have to be some Down syndrome kid with no legs and no arms, but has a beautiful voice. It's like just because you have gone through more than another person doesn't mean you deserve more of anything than they do. Because at the end of the day, we're all humans. We all have trials and tribulations. It just really depends on what your overall goal when it comes to sharing your suffering with others. And comparing suffering, it almost becomes like a victim mentality within itself because you know I'll touch on later in the video about the modern day implications of it, but comparing your suffering is pretty much equivalent to kind of wanting to be that victim or having that victim mindset, and having that kind of mindset doesn't really get you anywhere. If anything, this holds you back from anything that you truly can be, because if you're always the victim of something, you'll never be the proactive person you need to be to achieve your goals, to achieve things you want in life, and overall, like the the comparison itself is the thief of joy. That's the saying they always say. If you always compare yourself in general, whether it's your suffering, your achievements, your wins, your losses, it's always gonna end up just creating a worse mood for yourself. You're never gonna be able to enjoy or grow or learn from anything you gain in this life, whether the experience is good or bad, because you're always comparing it to something else that someone else went through. And I think to kind of hit back on the main idea even more, because I kind of went left there, is that like shared suffering itself also creates a community of victims. Like you're just gonna it how do I explain this? Like if everyone around you takes on that victimhood mentality, at the end, like, who's the prosecutor? Who's the one that inflicted that pain on you? Because then it just becomes an echo chamber of sadness, of pain, of suffering, just because you wanted to find some kind of solace. When on an individual level, if you were able to grow above it, learn from it, and truly grow and grow past it, you can create a community around you that is more than just negativity. Because I feel like if you believe in like whatever the hell you believe in, like God, energy, the universe, where the hell you want, at the end of the day, we do. I think I said this in the last video too. You have, we all have energy. We all have some sort of battery. That we all carry with us throughout a day, throughout our lives. And if you always surround yourself with that negativity, that's the only way. That's the only thing that's gonna fill your battery within you, and in turn creating a negative person. So I think we need to stray away from that community of victimhood, that community of suffering. And I think when comparing, going back to the idea of where comparison's a thief of joy, where if you always idolize in another, like traits in another individual, you'll never actually achieve those things. You know, you're having limerence, not of a person, but of a idea of traits of within a person. You know, and if you constantly just sit there thinking about how you could have had this, how you should have that, you'll never have the time to truly go out and grab it. You know, you'll never have the effort, the energy, the mental capacity to truly achieve the things you want in this world. And I think that kind of says a lot about our modern day society as well. You know, because like I feel like trying to get better is almost genetic. You know, trying to be better is genetic, but I think the real issue is where you're trying to be better than your fellow man. You know, we all want to be something else. You know, we all want to be greater, but what's the cost if we're putting those beneath us in this in that greater sense? You know, like why must we put down our fellow man in order to climb above them? Why is that the instance? You know, and I think that kind of goes with my next point here, is that like that's just this capitalistic society mindset that we have grown up to live in. You know, like we must sacrifice everything, whether it's others, ourselves, our time, our family, or whatever the hell, for greatness. You know, we have to, which I'll kind of cover in another video, like sacrifice in general. I'll cover in another video, but I think that's kind of the mindset that we all have, is we have to, in order to grow, we have to destroy. And I think that's counterintuitive, you know? And then when you're constantly comparing other successes to your own, whatever you do will never be good enough in your own eyes, you know? Because in your mind, just because you saved up enough money to buy like a car, for instance, you see on Instagram or you see somewhere else down the road, someone has a Lamborghini driving down, you know, speeding down. To you, it'll never, like, your overall goal was fruitless because someone else has something better than you. You know, even though you put all this sacrifice, all this time and energy towards getting this car, you know? And also, I think this kind of touches on another idea here. I'm a kind of monkey branch, like I said at the beginning of the video. I'm a monkey branch between different ideas here to create an overall point. You know, trying to be different for attention is something that has been prolific within our society. You know, to get attention, you have to be the victim. You know, that's how, like, instead of like seeking attention through self-expression, we seek it through victimhood. And I think like that kind of even goes back on the previous idea I just shared, is that like that creates a community of suffering, of shared suffering, you know, within itself. Because if everyone's trying to be different, if everyone's just trying to be a victim of some circumstance, or someone's just trying to be niche in general, you're creating a community within itself. So then at the end of the day, it's just ironic. It just becomes an ironic thing. And I think overall, all this kind of victimhood, all this community, all these communities of shared suffering, all these ideas of how we have to sacrifice to be our fellow man, to become greater, are things that are going to negatively impact your life, your mindset, that it almost becomes fruitless and hopeless at the end of the day, no matter what you do. Wait, hold on, Diet Coke break. Anyways, kind of end off this video, I want to kind of leave this message with y'all. Those who get it, you know, we must slap the other ass cheek and not let the scars of our own suffering make who we are. You know, we have to be like a penis and grow above the bush of our own despair by rushing opportunity and a growth mindset to do so. You know, we have to fill our own energies, our own self-fulfillment, our own ideal mindsets with positivity and proactiveness in order to grow above our own despair. and really just slap the other ass cheek and recognize that at the end of the day, we're all humans. We all go through the same thing, and we all can do better than our own situation. We all can realize the pain and suffering can only be so temporary, and that we can go past it, you know? But let me know what y'all think. I know I was just kind of monkey branching like earlier. I said earlier between different ideas, but let me know if y'all enjoyed. Peace.